All right, Terrence, for this last story we're going to talk about, there was a really interesting article in the Hessinger report talking about how EdTech or educational technology can worsen racial inequality in schools. And it goes on to say that Black and Hispanic students already face inequities when it comes to disciplinary actions, course placement, culturally irrelevant content, flat out racist teachers and administrators. Basically, what happens in schools is the same thing that happens in the world. So there are some flat out just racist teachers and folks in schools teaching your children. But it goes on to say that, so schools should be thoughtful with expansion of tech tools in the classroom, not to exacerbate, these other forms of discrimination. And like I said, it's not a long read, but it's a really good one. So there is a person. Her name is hopefully I'm pronouncing her name right. I think it is Nidhi Habar. She's a former education lead at Apple and co-founder of EdTech Equality Project. And she says that oftentimes tech companies didn't really seem to understand the experience of Black and brown students in the classroom. And I say that to say this, our very first show, we were talking about algorithms and AI and bias in them. And if you really think about it, there's no reason to think that, well, just because this is educational technology, that those same biases and algorithms and AI don't work there. One of the examples was a problem with racial bias. Some of the personalized learning software that was using voice assistant technology to measure students' language comprehension and creation skills. And, what Ms. Habar said is if it wasn't trained on students with an accent, for example, or those who speak at home with a different dialect, it can very easily learn that certain students are wrong and other students are correct. And this can discourage students. So here's what I'm thinking is that, and we said this on this show many, many times, just when it comes to African Americans, most who are speaking English and only English, we are bilingual. We actually speak the Queen's English, or we speak Midwestern English like most people do. Or if you're down south, you speak down south English. But most of the country is pretty much a Midwestern English type accent. But when you are around your people, we tend to, move back into African American vernacular. And or it used to be called Ebonics. That's not what it is. A long time ago, we used to call it slang. It's not that, but there's just a different cadence to the way that we speak. And if you aren't training your AI to pick up on that, if you aren't training your voice assistants to pick up on that, it can actually, have an answer that was correct if you understand how the child was actually saying, speaking the information, and say that that's incorrect. And that alone can just discourage them from wanting to even use the technology in the first place. So really interesting article here.
Well, I was looking at it as a different angle, and I don't know if she talked about this she mentioned it briefly, but I wanted to expand on it. She says, oftentimes tech companies didn't really seem to understand the experience of Black and brown students in a classroom. When tech companies build products for schools, they either partner with schools that are in affluent, predominantly white suburban areas, or lean on the educational experience of their employees, she said. And this is the part I want to kind of take a little different direction. The rush to adopt tech during the pandemic has been problematic because school procurement officers didn't always have time to properly vet tech tools or have rigorous conversations with tech companies. That's kind of the thing I wanted to expand on a little bit different and with a personal story, right? I live in an affluent white neighborhood, one of the nicest in the state, one of the best high schools in the state, right? When the pandemic hit, the school board or the school district adopted this new or developed or partnered with this tech company to create this new way that the kids had to log in, get their information, get their classwork, interact with their teachers, things of that nature. Again, I mentioned we're in an affluent white area. It was a mess. The teachers were using a combination of this new tool with Zoom, with Microsoft 365, with Google Docs, with email, and it was just a whole mess of stuff. Right now, keep in mind, I'm in a affluent area and it was a train wreck. Imagine how it was in a underfunded, underrepresented district, to where the school board didn't have the finances or the time, like she mentioned in this story. They didn't have the ability to move this fast to adjust to the pandemic. So now we have a bunch of kids who have this gap in their education because the schools did the best that they could, but didn't even have the access to actually vet this stuff and put it in place and roll it out to where it made sense. Because again, the affluent areas had a problem rolling this stuff out so fast. So it's back to the old thing that I always say, when white people catch a cold, we catch pneumonia, simply because not necessarily, and it could, in addition to, it could also be during the biases and, how you train AI and how the people who develop AI, they didn't consult with everybody that this is supposed to be meant for. And as a result, there's going to be biases, there's going to be indiscrepancies. And as a result, minority, underrepresented kids going to fail. In addition to that, actually having the resources in order to roll this out in a responsible way that's not going to set kids back is a whole nother issue, if not, in my opinion, probably is paramount to the ability to make sure that this new AI or whatever is going to be non-biased, is going to make sure that Black and brown kids have the experience according to their background. They can't even get it to start with, So as technology progresses, as schools progress, as teachers get smarter, as more technology rolls into the schools, and they have time to sit with this, to figure out if it works and figure out if there are biases, and then how we're going to correct for those biases. Meanwhile, you got these kids over here that can't even get it. So they're already getting set back even more. So I just wanted to put that in there, as how I feel about EdTech.
No, that is a big part of it. I remember I have a good friend who is a high school principal, and one of the things that, when the pandemic hit, what they were scrambling for, it was like, oh, well, we're just going to send home Chromebooks with all the students, and they'll be able to do that. And he's like, but what about the students who don't have home internet? Mm-hmm. What do you do there? So it was not even, what do you mean? It's like everybody has some. No, everybody does not have home internet. We heard the stories of the kids going and, sitting on the curb at the Taco Bell or the McDonald's, where they were using their free Wi-Fi so they could get online in order to be able to do their assignments because they didn't have it at home. Mm-hmm. So just thinking about things like that, you got to take those kind of things into an account. And that isn't really even a Black thing or a white thing. That's just, do you have it or do you not have it thing? That is more of a resources thing. But there are specifically some things here where, biases in these AIs come into play. Like I said, our very first show, this is what we started off talking about. So this article actually makes reference to things such as, discrepancies in AI, how much less effective it is for Black and brown women than it is for white men. Those kind of things. When you didn't intend for it to be that way, it's just because of the data sets that you trained your data on. You didn't actually use diverse data sets. So there was a quote in here in this story where, the lady was saying that, and I'm paraphrasing, but she's basically saying that one of the things that a lot of ed tech companies will do is say, well, we didn't actually, for privacy reasons, we didn't actually look at race when we were creating the software. And she flat out says that's a cop-out. She's like, because if you can't actually keep people safe when you're actually looking at race, you probably shouldn't be looking at any of the things. It's like those things, actually matter. So that's one of the issues. And like I said, the big example that she gave was like, if you basically have folks who are speaking a different language or a different dialect, and you haven't trained your AI to pick up on those differences, then you're going to mark things that probably should be marked right, or actually things that should be marked wrong, when they actually were correct. And that causes all kinds of issues. So, and like I said, it was just one example, but it goes to show that there is a lot of stuff that you have to think about on just the way that people are different. When it comes to, are you black, are you brown, are you white, are you Asian, those type of things. One of the other things that I was just thinking, in reading this is that the words diversity, equity, and inclusion were used a lot in this article. And then I started to think about states like Florida, to where it's just different, man. It's different down there than it is a lot of places. But what is it? I believe it's the new college. They just got rid of their diversity, equity, and inclusion department at the university. They've completely gotten rid of the program. Mm-hmm. And I believe there were 4 people who were working in it. They have reassigned into openings other places in the university, but they have gotten rid of it. And when you hear some of the lawmakers who talk about, well, here's why we did it. We don't believe that you should even recognize race. We don't believe that there's any difference between anyone. And it's like, that's not what DEI is trying to do. It's like, we're not saying that, because you are black or because you are white, you're somehow different. We're saying that because you are black or because you are white, you basically have different experiences based off the way the world treats you. Those are 2 different things. And it is a nuanced conversation, but it's once it needs time for happen.
Nuance, man.
So it's interesting to me. One of the things that, this article is pointing out, you need to actually look at these things to make sure that you're being equitable to all of your students. And you have entire governments, a big portion of our government here in the United States is like, nah, we don't even want to look at that anymore. We don't think we need that. We think that's the problem. We think that, we think that because we are actually making these distinctions based off of race or class, that's actually the problem in America. And if we just get rid of that and act like none of these things exist, then it's all going to go away. And that's me editorializing on that last part of that paragraph. But that is a big part. And I was just, as I was reading this, I'm just wondering, it's like, how would this fly in Florida? How would this fly in Virginia? I don't think it would in the same way that it would in New York City, that it would in LA, that it would in Chicago. So something that, we have to think about. That's probably for another show at another time.